Hello and welcome to Bike Ride Reviews. I'm your host Scott, and today we're looking at the Snapcycle R1 Pro e-bike. Like many options in the popular fat tire e-bike segment, this is a big, heavy bike. It also looks a lot like many other fat tire e-bikes from China. In fact, you could be excused for thinking that they're all the same bike, just with different names. That's why Bike Ride is here to examine the important details that help you decide where to put your money. And in this video review, we're going to run through the R1 Pro specifications. You're going to see some test ride footage, and we're going to give performance figures from our standardized tests, as well as list the pros and cons of this bike. At the end, we'll deliver our overall impressions of the bike. And remember, if you find our reviews helpful, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and click on the notification bell so you don't miss any future reviews. If you have any questions or comments, why not join the discussion under the video? Your feedback helps make our content more relevant for you. And most importantly, thank you for your views and support. Before we get onto the bike, we should talk a bit about Snapcycle. Snapcycle sells a range of folding and traditional e-bikes for commuting, cargo, and recreation. It's one of countless Chinese e-bike brands that sprang up in the last decade or so. Compared to the major cycling companies, these smaller brands lack heritage, market size, and geographical footprint. Snapcycle's address appears to be a virtual mailbox, and its service center is an e-bike store that retails several other brands as well. As a result, there may be questions about long-term support for servicing, spare parts, and warranty claims. So what is the Snapcycle R1 Pro? The R1 Pro is Snapcycle's recently released upgrade to its R1 fat tire e-bike. It's available as a step-through or a step-over frame style, and we're testing the step-through version here. This is an adventure-style fat bike with an aluminum frame and a suspension fork. A 960 watt-hour battery powers a 750 watt hub motor, and there's a thumb throttle, as well as a torque sensor which manages pedal assist. This isn't the first Snapcycle that we've reviewed at Bike Ride. I'll put links to reviews of other Snapcycle bikes and alternatives to the R1 Pro down in the description. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can also click the link below to see the full written review at bikeride.com, along with many other reviews and a range of other resources for cyclists. Now let's get back to the R1 Pro. The R1 Pro comes with fenders, a rear rack, and nicely integrated front and rear lights. So far, so good, right? And pretty much what you might expect on this kind of e-bike. However, the R1 Pro has a few extra touches. The headlight has switchable high and low beams. And at the rear, we have brake light activation and turn signals. A nice touch that should improve safety when you're out on the road. Our R1 Pro came with a front rack, which obviously expands the cargo capacity, but it is optional, and that means that it costs extra. Snapcycle has smoothly integrated the headlight into the handlebars. Similarly, the display is embedded into the stem portion of this one-piece cockpit. As usual, there's a fair number of cables running from the handlebar, but these are nicely organized, and they disappear into the frame, right behind the head tube. The bike looks fairly tidy without the bundle of snakes that affects some e-bikes. But this level of integration can mean that servicing or replacing some of these components will involve more work than usual. The R1 Pro comes configured for Class 2 operation with a 20 mph speed limit. The throttle can be removed for Class 1 or Class 3 operation, and the throttle can also be unlocked to reach 28 mph. This does, however, introduce a potential problem. More about that later. The Snapcycle comes with a smartphone app that's supposed to connect to the bike over Bluetooth. Now, there were a few initial problems with this that I'm going to get into more detail later. But based on the initial assessment of the specifications, the Snapcycle R1 Pro is a reasonably powerful cruiser, or a recreational bike, that's going to be able to be used on light off-road trails. but how does that initial view pan out? Let's have a look at this bike's key strengths and weaknesses. Our first pro for this bike is the motor and torque sensor. Thanks to the R1 Pro's nicely tuned torque sensor, the powerful 750 watt motor provides a good balance of intuitive assistance at low speeds and an easy ability to hit higher speeds. I appreciated being able to maintain 20 miles per hour using the highest pedal assist that was available, without having to exert too much effort at the pedals. Unlocked, this bike easily reaches 28 miles per hour. Pedal assistance kicks in quickly, which is especially helpful on hills, and throttle response is good too. The R1 Pro proved to be a capable hill climber, and despite the power on tap here, the battery range is still good. The second pro is the range. In testing, the R1 Pro's 20 amp hour battery managed almost 40 miles at 20 miles per hour while on pedal assist 5, the highest pedal assist level. Dropping down to pedal assist level 3, the range topped 45 miles at an average of 15.5 miles per hour. Battery voltage tapers off smoothly, so there's no sudden drop in performance. Credit for the good range must go to the torque sensor, which manages motor power very nicely, conserving power by never giving you more power than you want. And getting into the cons, the bike does not feature a UL certification. Although the charger that comes with the R1 Pro is UL certified, neither the battery nor any other part of the bike's electrical system is UL rated. These days, that's a big miss. We asked Snapcycle when the R1 Pro might get those safety ratings, but they haven't responded so far. The second con is the bike's poor off-road performance. Like many similar e-bikes, the R1 Pro has a low-cost coil suspension fork. Snapcycle says that the step-over has 175 millimeters of travel, and this step-through has 135 millimeter, but it actually measures at around 125 millimeters. Whatever the travel is, the fork very easily blows through it. With my 180 pounds aboard, it frequently bottomed out over bumps. Hardly the all-terrain vehicle touted by Snapcycle. This is a hardtail, with no rear suspension, so it's really down to those wheels and fat tires to absorb shocks and maintain traction. In rough terrain, the tires have to be aired down a lot to improve the ride quality, but these low pressures increase the risk of rim damage and pinch flats. The tires and rims aren't tubeless ready, so that's not an option either. The Kenda Crusade tires do come with Kenda's K-Shield, which is a tire liner to prevent punctures. But that only stops intrusions by sharp objects. It's no help against pinch flats or dinged rims. Even on light trails and single track, it's still not plain sailing, as the bike's size and weight really hinder maneuverability. In this regard, it's no different from most electric fat bikes. But this is still worth noting if you're wondering how the R1 Pro compares to a lighter, more compact e-bike with narrower tires. But let's say you're happy to let your arms and legs soak up those bumps. Well, you might want earplugs. The cheap Drivetrain suffers from chain slap, and the fenders also slap around, adding to the din. Now, I know, you could remove the fenders to quiet things down a bit, but then you and the bike face an assault from water, dirt, and debris. Hey, at least the motor is not unusually noisy, I guess. So who fits on this bike? To be completely honest, we can't be too sure. The Snapcycle website states a height range of 5 feet 6 inches to 6 feet 7 inches, but the user manual says 5 feet 3 inches to 6 feet 4 inches. So not only do we not know who this bike should fit, but it doesn't seem like Snapcycle does either. And frankly, such wide height ranges are a bit absurd. I'm 6 feet tall, and the bike fits well, with the saddle about 5 inches up from the minimum setting. Now I typically ride a large or extra large frame, so bear that in mind. Remember the chain slap and those noisy fenders we talked about? Well, the brakes apparently wanted to join the party. The rear brakes squealed like a stuck pig. And the front brakes were noisy too, though not as loud as the rear, which really took center stage. This bike has hydraulic disc brakes, but they're a set of inexpensive Logan-branded 2-piston calipers with 180mm rotors. In testing, braking performance was fine, but we can't help but think a bike that weighs over 80 pounds and can do 28 miles per hour when it's unlocked really deserves stronger brakes. And for sure, the consistent loud squealing when coming to a stop is very annoying. Also annoying is the inability to ascertain exactly what brakes this bike is actually supposed to have. The Snapcycle website says it's supposed to have Zonglin brakes with 160mm rotors. We asked Snapcycle about this disparity, but their response wasn't 100% clear, and appeared to indicate that some R1 Pros come with the Zonglin brakes and smaller rotors, rather than the Logan brakes and 180mm rotors which are found on our test bike. So what does this bike do best? The Snapcycle R1 Pro has a muscular 750 watt motor that peaks at 1200 watts and boasts 85 Nm of torque. It packs a beefy 960 watt-hour battery, a well-tuned torque sensor, and good battery range. Especially with the optional front rack, there's plenty of room for cargo. It complies to Class 2 e-bike rules, the throttle can be removed, and the bike can even be unlocked for 28 miles per hour in a Class 3 setting. Despite the noise, the tested braking distances are on par with those of other brands. And finally, the R1 Pro comes with fenders, a rear rack, and nicely integrated lights with brake activation and turn signals. Now, this is a big, heavy bike, and as tested here with the front rack installed, the R1 Pro weighs in at about 82.4 pounds. Without it, it's just under 80 pounds. Now, this isn't unusual for a fat tire e-bike, but it's worth bearing in mind, especially for smaller riders. That weight also makes transporting the R1 Pro a challenge, and this is worsened by the bike's 72-inch length. Most bike racks won't be able to carry it. And then there's the inconsistent sizing. The Snapcycle website and the bike's user manual don't agree on who it fits, and the stated height range is just unrealistic. Perhaps a bigger concern is the missing UL certification and the lack of any response from the brand regarding this. Now, on the road, the bike can do 28 miles per hour when it's unlocked, but the limited gearing range leads to ghost pedaling above 20 miles per hour. So you're really stuck using the throttle or pedaling pretty quickly, which is going to reduce battery range even further. Finally, there's the lack of off-road performance. Yes, you can take the R1 Pro off-road, but the suspension and ride quality really aren't up to the demands of anything more than some light trails and grass. And then there's all that noise. The aluminum alloy step-through frame feels solidly built, with no noticeable flex. Thanks to that rigidity, there's none of the disconcerting shimmy that I've experienced when riding some fat tire step-throughs. There was one odd problem initially though. Somehow, part of the headset bearing assembly ended up misaligned. This resulted in some weird handling, with the bike always leaning to one side when I would remove my hands from the handlebars. I'm not sure how that happened, but since I spotted the problem and fixed it, the R1 Pro handles like any other fat tire e-bike. Still, that's something to watch out for during assembly. The frame has mounting points for fenders and racks at both ends, but there are no bosses for bottle changes or other accessories. Finally, the bike has a stated payload capacity of 275 pounds, which is far below average for fat tire e-bikes, or at least it had that payload capacity. While we were producing this review, Snapcycle changed the payload capacity to 330 pounds. So as with so much about this bike, who even really knows anymore? As I've already discussed, there's no clear guidance on rider fit, and Snapcycle doesn't publish geometry figures. So we went ahead and measured the R1 Pro. You can find all the measurements from our test in the written review on bikeride.com. As ever, the link is in the description below the video, and I'm going to take you through the sizing right now. The seat tube had a measurement of 18 inches, with a reach measurement of 16.5 inches, and a stack measurement of 27.5 inches, standover height of 18 inches, virtual top tube length of 21 inches, a minimum saddle height of 33.5 inches, with a max saddle height of 39 inches, a wheelbase of 50 inches, and a total length of 75 inches. The color display is small, simple, and it has a limited range of features. The readout shows speed, pedal assist level, and battery level. There's a trip meter, but no odometer showing the total distance traveled. Other readouts commonly available on e-bikes, such as a ride timer, are also missing. There's no option to monitor battery voltage, and during my test, the 5-bar battery meter fluctuated up and down by about 1 bar, depending on how hard the motor was working. The battery range dropped in a consistent manner, making it easy to estimate the remaining range. There are 12 advanced menu options. These are detailed in the user manual, and they can be accessed by pushing the up and down buttons together. One notable omission is the lack of a USB port to power a phone. The simple e-bike controls are located on the left side of the handlebar, next to the mechanical bell. There's a 3-button control pad for the bike and a pair of buttons for the turn signals. These units are separate, so they can be rotated to suit personal preferences. The control pad has a power button and up and down buttons. Holding the power button down turns the bike on or off. Other e-bikes often provide an option to change the display by single pressing the bike's power button, but on this bike, clicking the power button toggles between high beam and low beam if the headlights are on. The up and down buttons have several functions. Press up or down to change pedal assist levels. Holding the up button turns the headlight on or off, and holding the down button activates the walk mode. The turn signals must be turned on and off manually. There's no auto cancel or timer feature, and there's no turn signal icon on the display or audible warning if you've forgotten to cancel a turn signal. The first time that I tried to use the app, I couldn't get it to pair with the bike. The process outlined in the manual didn't work because the auto pairing function couldn't find the bike, and there's no obvious way to set up Bluetooth pairing manually. I contacted Snapcycle about this, and they got back to me after a couple of days with a reset procedure. After I reset the bike, the app paired to it without any problems. It would have been good to include this in the manual with a little bit more instruction. Snapcycle doesn't provide a bespoke app for the bike. It uses the generic Smart Life app by Toyo, which is available for both Android and Apple phones. This app is also available for iPad and Apple Watch. I haven't tested it on those, and I don't know if it's available for Android devices other than phones. A generic app deprives Snapcycle of the opportunity to provide some bespoke features. Now, Smart Life is a highly rated and popular app, offering wide scope to manage a range of home automation devices and integration with digital assistants like Amazon Alexa. Overall, the Smart Life app's functionality is kind of underwhelming, with only basic options and no ride tracking feature. Some of the options pulled up dialog windows that contained irrelevant template text or seemed to not function properly. The only real use for this app is for managing a handful of options: Bluetooth keyless locking and maybe troubleshooting, but this is something I haven't had a chance to test. Given this bike's price, the lack of a USB power port or phone mount, the underwhelming generic app, and the basic display are pretty disappointing. The 750 watt motor, paired with the nicely tuned torque sensor, is definitely one of this bike's strengths. I found the torque sensor responsive and nicely tuned. Power kicks in with little delay, providing smooth assistance at low speeds, and assistance climbs nicely in line with pedaling effort. Motor noise is on par with other bikes at this price point. The pedal-assisted Level 5 provides plenty of assistance, so there's no need to pedal too hard. Not only does this make it easy to maintain high speeds without breaking a sweat, but combined with the motor's 85 Nm of torque, climbing hills is a cinch. Thanks to the responsive torque sensor, the bike pulls away very smartly from a standstill. However, it's so sensitive that you can't just sit there with your foot resting on the pedal. You have to hold the brakes to stop the bike from pulling away if your foot's resting on those pedals. And this can get annoying. I really wish that Snapcycle included a way to fine-tune this sensitivity, at least when you're standing still. With up to 1200 watt peak power available and 85 Nm of torque, this bike offers good acceleration. Carrying my 180 pounds, the R1 Pro reached 20 miles per hour from a standstill in 9 seconds using pedal assist, and 11 seconds using that thumb-style throttle. Let's take a closer look at the R1 Pro's hill climbing performance. When I test an e-bike's ability to climb hills, I run 2 tests. The small hill test tends to reward bikes with less torque and higher top speeds, and it's a good representation of the kinds of hills the average rider is likely to encounter. The medium hill has a 12-degree incline. The steepest e-bike riders will normally face outside of very hilly areas. The R1 Pro climbed the medium hill in 2 minutes and 26 seconds at an average speed of 16.6 miles per hour. The small hill it tackled in 3 minutes and 3 seconds, averaging 18.8 miles per hour. Using the thumb-style throttle, the R1 Pro gets to 20 miles per hour in a decent 11 seconds. Using pedal assist level 5, it shaves 2 seconds off that time, doing 0 to 20 miles per hour in 9 seconds. And unlocked, this bike will go to hit 28 miles per hour using pedal assist. The R1 Pro's hill climbing and acceleration are on par with similar bikes from other competitors. The bike has a 48 volt, 20 amp hour, or 960 watt hour battery that nicely complements the 750 watt motor. There's no safety certification for the motor, battery, or motor controller. And not only is this subpar in 2024, but the lack of UL certification means that this bike can't even be sold in some places, such as New York City. In range tests, the R1 Pro put in a good effort, managing 38.97 miles and 1,152 feet of elevation on maximum pedal assist. With that assist turned down to level 3, the R1 Pro covered 45.21 miles, gaining 1,496 feet of elevation. Both tests were done at an average of around 15.5 miles per hour. The charger puts out 3 amps, the normal rating these days, and provides a full charge in 6 to 7 hours according to Snapcycle. There's the usual rubber part for the charge port, and the battery can be removed and charged off the bike. And a key-operated lock secures the battery in the frame. To remove the battery, you'll first insert the key and turn it to the unlock position. This will cause the battery to pop up and out of the frame. Then you'll simply pull up and out of the frame to remove the battery. Inserting the battery is basically the reverse. Align the contacts at the bottom of the battery, insert the bottom end first, and then push the top of the battery into place and click the battery home. Then twist the key to lock the battery in place and remove the key. The R1 Pro's drivetrain is a typical collection of budget components. There's the ubiquitous Shimano Tourney 7-speed derailleur, paired with a corresponding Tourney TX50 overhand shifter for your right hand to operate. At the rear, gearing is provided by a 14 to 28 tooth cassette, and the pedals are attached to 170mm crank arms, driving a single 48 tooth chainring. A double-sided aluminum guard protects the chainring from foreign objects, and your clothes from that chain. The gearing is fine for speeds up to 20 miles per hour, but ride any faster and ghost pedaling becomes a problem. As noted before, there's a lot of chain slap over bumps and when riding off-road. The R1 Pro I received from Snapcycle has generic Logan dual piston hydraulic brakes with 180mm rotors front and rear. Confusingly, the Snapcycle website says that the bike comes with Zonglin brakes and 160mm rotors. When asked about this, Snapcycle seemed to say that most R1 Pros now come with the Logan brakes and bigger rotors. but there's a risk that buyers could end up with the Zonglin brakes and 160mm rotors. Reach on the Logan brake levers is adjustable, using a small set screw near the base of the lever. In testing, the Logan brakes performed well, coming to a complete stop in 18.5 feet from 20 miles per hour. This is in line with the braking performances of comparable bikes that we've tested, and it's almost as good as the best results, which are under 18 feet. The Snapcycle R1 Pro has aluminum 26-inch rims that wear 4-inch wide Kenda Crusade tires. These are good quality tires that come with 3mm puncture protection liners and feature reflective stripes on the sidewalls. Snapcycle ships the bike with full coverage fenders. As highlighted earlier, these tires aren't tubeless ready, so airing them down in search of improved traction and ride comfort off-road could result in punctures and rim damage. On-road performance is fine, but the aggressive tread is noisy, and it doesn't roll as easily as a tread pattern designed for the road. Like other fat tire bikes with chunky 4-inch tires, the R1 Pro has a large turning radius and handling is sluggish compared to bikes with narrower tires or smaller wheels. The R1 Pro comes with a reasonable set of accessories. The full coverage fenders are useful on the road, but they make too much noise off-road. And the included rear rack is installed on the 3 mounting points at the back. Snapcycle supplied the bike to us with the optional front rack, which attaches to the 4 mounting points on the head tube. The bike features nicely integrated lights. The headlight also has switchable high and low beams. And the frame integrated rear lights also function as turn signals, and they have brake activation, so they light up when you pull the brake levers. There's also a red reflector mounted on the back. The bike has a heavy-duty, single-sided kickstand. This operated fine throughout testing. Snapcycle also offers extra batteries, frame and saddlebags, and some replacement parts. The only real omission here is the lack of mounting points for a bottle cage. The included lock-on grips are ergonomic and made from rubber. They were comfortable, offered good grip, and they didn't move around on the bars. The saddle is padded and wide. I found it to be comfortable throughout testing. The pedals are typical for this kind of bike. They have a standard aluminum platform with small alloy pins. The Snapcycle R1 Pro is another big boy. It has a torquey motor that copes well with hills, and a nicely tuned torque sensor that combines with the motor's 750 watts to provide smooth, responsive pedaling at low speeds, and plenty of power for higher speeds. Thanks to the torque sensor, the 48-volt 20-amp-hour battery does the business too, getting 35 to 40 miles of range at higher speeds and pedal assist settings. The bike's bulk and weight made it a handful on twisty off-road sections, where it also suffers due to the low-quality suspension fork and the lack of rear suspension. It's a good-looking bike though, with an attractive frame design, nice paint, and a sleek cockpit and tidy cabling. However, the brakes, fenders, and chain slap do make a lot of noise, and the smartphone app is almost pointless. Snapcycle says, "Explore together the best e-bike of the year, suitable for riders of all terrains and ages." No, Snapcycle, just no. Look, this isn't a bad e-bike, but it's not up to the demands of the complex terrain that Snapcycle says it will handle. And it for sure isn't going to suit riders of all ages, especially if they're small. Overall, the R1 Pro does a decent job as a commuter or recreation bike that can just about handle modest off-road excursions. However, given that limited suspension, noisy drivetrain, lack of clear specifications, and how difficult it is to get a response from Snapcycle, you might want to spend your money elsewhere. For comparison, check out the Himaway Zebra D5 and Fido Titan e-bikes that I reviewed earlier. You'll find links to both below. So what do you think? Have you tried the Snapcycle R1 Pro? Let me know in the comments below. And as ever, you'll want to hop on over to bikeride.com for more bike reviews or to join the discussions in the forums. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe and click that notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming reviews. I'm Scott at bikeride.com. Thanks for tuning in.